I was used to being ignored. People passed me like I didn't exist, head down, eyes glazed, the way folks look at an old man who's seen too many winters. My clothes were clean but worn, my boots scuffed from too many miles. I sat on the same park bench every morning, near the fountain outside Capitol Hall, sipping cheap coffee and reading the classifieds like they still meant something. They saw a man with gray hair and a slow walk. They didn't see what I had once been. Most didn't even nod. Some gave looks, the kind that said, "You're in the way." A few whispered things I tried not to hear. Security guards eyed me like I was loitering. Tourists snapped pictures near me like I was part of the background, stone, not flesh. Until one morning, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and a tall man stepped out. Broad-shouldered. Polished boots. Starched uniform. The silver stars on his collar caught the morning sun. He looked around, scanning the area. Then he saw me. And everything stopped. He froze in place. For a heartbeat, I wasn't sure if he recognized me, or if he was just another man sizing up a stranger in a public space. But then, without hesitation, he moved. Straight toward me. Quick steps. Determined. The guards at the fountain took notice. One started walking over, already reaching for his radio. But the man in uniform didn't even blink. His eyes locked on mine, like he was zeroing in on a target he'd trained for. And then it happened. The general, because that's what he clearly was, came to a halt just a foot in front of me. His back went rigid. His heels clicked together with practiced precision. And with a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, he barked, "SIR. Permission to speak freely, SIR." Every conversation in the plaza stopped. Coffee lids froze midair. The guard who'd been approaching just stood there, dumbfounded. You could hear the splash of the fountain and the wind moving through the flags overhead. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. Because for the first time in years, someone remembered. I slowly stood up. My knees didn't move like they used to, but the weight of that moment made them feel stronger somehow. The general's eyes never left mine, not even as the silence around us thickened. People were starting to gather now. Phones discreetly lifted. Whispers traveled like sparks through dry grass. I gave him a quiet nod. "Go ahead," I said. His shoulders dropped just a little, not from disrespect, but relief. Like he'd been holding something in for years. "Sir, it's an honor. I read about you at the academy. They told us what you did in '84. What you stopped. They said you vanished after the debrief." I gave a faint smile. Wasn't much left to say after that. He glanced down briefly, then looked back up with something fierce in his expression. "With respect, sir. You saved lives. Changed protocol. Some of us," he paused. "Some of us are here because of the standards you set. You taught them how to lead." Behind him, the young security guard was still frozen in place. A woman in a business suit covered her mouth in surprise. Someone muttered, "Who is he?" I was no one, remember? And yet this general, this man with the stars, stood straight in front of me like I still wore the uniform, like time hadn't stolen rank or memory. And just when I thought it couldn't get more surreal, he reached into his jacket pocket. From the inner pocket of his uniform, the general pulled out a small, leather-bound case, worn at the edges but well cared for. He held it in both hands with the reverence of someone handling a sacred object. He opened it slowly. Inside was a polished metal badge, an old special operations insignia, the kind they stopped issuing decades ago. Below it, a single line etched into brass, "Integrity before recognition." My chest tightened. I hadn't seen that badge in over 30 years. "You dropped this," the general said quietly. "Not literally, sir. But you left it behind. Someone had to carry it until we found the one it truly belonged to. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just a symbol. That badge meant something back then. It was given to those who completed missions with zero recognition, zero expectation, operations so buried, even the president never received full details. I'd walked away from it all to live in silence, by choice. Never wanted thanks. Never sought credit. But now, here it was again, staring back at me like a mirror from another life. I reached out and closed the case. And as I looked around, I noticed what had changed. People weren't looking through me anymore. They were watching with wide eyes, some with tears, others with quiet awe. And then, before I could say a word, a convoy of black vehicles pulled up along the curb. The vehicles were spotless. Government plates. Flags mounted on the front. Doors swung open with mechanical precision. Men and women in formal attire stepped out, some in uniform, some in suits. Their expressions were unreadable, but their direction was clear. They were coming toward me. The general stepped back instinctively, standing at attention beside me. One of the men from the lead vehicle approached first. He was older, maybe late 60s, but sharp-eyed. His suit fit like armor. A silver lapel pin marked him as someone high in the chain, too high to be out here without reason. He stopped in front of me, looked me over carefully, and said, "Sir, your presence has been requested at the Pentagon. A formal acknowledgement is overdue." I raised an eyebrow. After all this time? He nodded. Some things were sealed. Some forgotten. But the people who remembered never stopped looking. Behind him, the group stood in a respectful formation, not rushing, not demanding. Just waiting. Like they understood something sacred was taking place. The general spoke up again, this time with softer conviction. "We didn't know if you were still alive, sir. But when I saw you, I knew. The bearing never leaves a man like you." I looked at the line of cars. I looked at the people who once passed me like I was invisible, now standing still, silent, watching history walk on two tired legs. And then I said the words I hadn't spoken in 3 decades, "Lead the way." The general snapped into motion, turning crisply on his heel and gesturing toward the lead vehicle. One of the aides opened the door, standing aside as if welcoming royalty. I hesitated for just a moment, glancing back at the bench, the quiet little spot where I had watched the world forget me. Not anymore. I climbed in slowly, the leather seats cradling me like a memory. The general took the seat beside me, silent but alert. As the convoy rolled forward, I could see people lining the sidewalks now. Word had spread fast. Some clapped quietly. Others stood with hands over their hearts. No one really understood why. But they felt it. Inside the car, the general finally broke the silence. "There's going to be a ceremony," he said. "Private, but high level. They want to declassify part of what you did. Enough to honor it. Enough to teach it." I looked out the window at the city blurring by. "I never did it for ceremonies." He nodded. "We know, sir. But this isn't for you. It's for the ones who need to remember why we do it at all." His words settled over me like a flag being folded, heavy, respectful, final. As we passed the Jefferson Memorial, I saw a small boy on his father's shoulders, pointing at the convoy with wonder in his eyes. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt seen. The gates of the Pentagon opened without delay. Inside, everything was still, disciplined, quiet, deliberate. As we stepped out of the vehicle, I noticed something I hadn't seen in decades: young officers lined along the walkway, standing at attention. Some saluted. Some simply stared, like they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. The general walked half a step behind me, not from hesitation, but tradition. Inside the building, they led me through security without a word. No ID. No scans. Just a knowing nod from a colonel who looked like he'd read my file cover to cover. We passed corridors lined with portraits and plaques. Some bore the names of men I once knew, some lost, some disgraced, some honored. We stopped in front of a sealed door. No markings. Just a retinal scanner and a keypad with no labels. The general leaned toward me. "This room hasn't been opened in 28 years, he said. "It's been waiting for you." The aide beside him typed in a code, then stepped back. With a soft hiss, the door unlocked. Inside was a single room, dimly lit, quiet. On the walls were maps. Folders. Commendations. A weathered flag folded in a case. At the center, a table with a small brass plate that read, "Operation Nightlatch, Command, Redacted." I walked toward it slowly. And as I stood at that table again, something shifted in the air. A burden I'd carried alone for years, felt lighter. Then the general spoke again, this time his voice cracked, just slightly. "Sir, it's time they knew who you are." I stared at the table, at the evidence of a mission the world was never supposed to know about. A mission buried so deep it became ghost history. The brass plate alone would have meant nothing to most, but to those who understood, it was everything. Operation Nightlatch had nearly broken me. But it had saved thousands. I turned to face the general. His posture remained sharp, but there was emotion in his eyes, a kind of pride I hadn't seen since command briefings long ago, when lives depended on silent decisions. He stepped forward and opened a case I hadn't noticed on the side. Inside, a crisp, framed citation. My name, restored in full. A unit designation once wiped from records. And below it, 4 signatures. One of them was the current Secretary of Defense. Another was the Chief of Staff. But it was the last that stopped me. It was the signature of a soldier I had pulled from an ambush 32 years ago. I didn't even know he'd survived. I lowered my head. Not out of shame, but out of something deeper, humility, maybe. Grief. A strange peace. "You kept it quiet all these years," the general said softly. "You never came forward. But your silence became a standard. And those of us who followed, we tried to live up to it." There was a pause. Then, behind me, the door opened again. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I turned, and saw a figure I never thought I'd meet again. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway's white light. Older now, gray at the temples, but unmistakable. His gait had slowed, a cane in his right hand. But the fire in his eyes hadn't dimmed one bit. The scar along his cheek was still there, a quiet reminder of a mission we were both never supposed to talk about. "Still standing, I see," he said with a faint grin. I could barely find my voice. "I thought you were gone." "Almost," he replied. "Twice. But turns out I owed someone my life. Had to stick around and pay it back." He stepped closer. The general snapped to attention again, but the man just gave him a nod, friendly, informal. This wasn't about protocol anymore. "I've read every word they declassified," the man said, looking around the room. "Still doesn't tell the full story. Doesn't explain what you did that night. But maybe it's better that way." I took a breath. It was never about recognition. "I know," he said. "That's why you deserve it." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small box. He opened it slowly, revealing a medal I hadn't seen in decades. One that was never officially awarded, only passed, in secret, between the shadows. It was mine. He placed it gently on the table beside the citation. No speeches. No applause. Just a look, between two men who had seen too much, lost too many, and survived more than they ever expected to. Then he said the words that stayed with me long after, "You disappeared from the world. But not from us." The room was silent again, this time not with confusion or curiosity, but with reverence. I stood there, the metal gleaming faintly beside the citation, surrounded by men and women who had read my story only in redacted lines and whispered footnotes. Now they saw the man behind it. The man they thought had vanished. The general approached one last time. No orders, no ceremony. Just a quiet gesture of respect. He raised his hand in a crisp salute, one not given lightly, not given out of duty, but out of genuine honor. And then, one by one, the others followed. Young officers. High-ranking staff. Even the old soldier with the cane. They saluted a man who had once been no one to the world outside. Who had been passed by on park benches. Who had become invisible to the public eye. But here, in this room, they called me what I hadn't heard in a long, long time, sir. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just returned the salute, steady, sharp, and final. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a ghost anymore. I felt like a soldier again. Later that evening, I stood alone at the edge of the Pentagon's reflection pool. The ceremony had ended. The medals, the citations, the handshakes, it was all over. The crowd had gone. The press hadn't been invited. The moment was never meant for headlines. It was for those who remembered what mattered, and those who'd never forget again. I looked at my reflection in the water. Same tired eyes. Same weathered face. But something had changed. Not on the outside, on the inside. A part of me that had been asleep for decades was finally awake again. Behind me, I heard soft footsteps. The general. He didn't say a word at first. Just stood beside me, hands behind his back. Then, without looking away from the water, he spoke. "We've reinstated your file," he said. "Unsealed portions of Nightlatch, per your approval. You'll have full control of what gets released and what stays buried." I nodded slowly. He turned to me. "There's one more thing." From his coat pocket, he pulled a new ID badge. Clean. Modern. My name, my face, my former rank. Below it, a single new designation, Honorary Strategic Advisor to the Joint Chiefs. I took it from him. For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or salute. I did none of those. Instead, I simply said, "Make sure the next one like me doesn't have to disappear to be remembered." He nodded once, firmly. "We will." Then he stepped back, leaving me there beneath the fading sun. And as the last light danced across the surface of the pool, I realized something: they had treated me like no one. But in the end, they remembered I was someone. And that was enough.